Minnesota sports flowing in their veins. Mackie and Judd on SKOR North and SKORNorth.com.
That's right, Mackie and Judd. Phil out in a long story. Anyway, Phil is doing a bunch of company work the last 2 weeks. This is his final week of doing it. So it's Mackie and Judd without Mackie for the first segment. Phil does chime in as we do write that down for the second segment. But Declan Goff.
Yes, sir.
I want to bring you a Vikings to-do list because it's my contention this is probably the most important week of training camp. And this is really, for all intents and purposes, the last week. Like, they'll go to more of a regular season format after this week.
Sure.
On Tuesday, we had the cutdowns, and they weren't big. But the cutdowns from 90 to 85 a week from Tuesday gets a little bit more dicey. 85 to 80, and then the last Tuesday of August, it gets really dicey because we go from 80 to 53. But this week, joint practices against San Francisco today and Thursday, off on Friday, game against San Francisco at US Bank Stadium on Saturday. But I think joint practice-wise in 2022, those practices are the most important. So like the game itself, on Saturday will be televised. We'll all watch it and be excited about it. But I actually think the most important work will be done in the controlled environment of a joint practice, which will feature, of course, Kevin O'Connell, Vikings coach, going against his very good friend, Kyle Shanahan, the man who sadly let Kirk Cousins get away. And so what I want to bring you is 5 storylines of a to-do list that the Vikings have that should start to clear themselves up this week. So clarity. That fair?
Yeah, I like
All right.
that. Okay,
So
5 to-do list. Let's do it.
I'm going to throw you 5 things, 5 talkers. React. Tell me what you think. Agree. Disagree. Not highly controversial, but they are 5 important things over the next 2 days and then into Saturday's game. All right.
Okay, let's do it.
Number 1, I'm going to start you with this one. And I think this is pretty important. I think it's even more important because he missed a little bit of time due to COVID. And look, this isn't a COVID rant. I'm just saying. Kirk Cousins, is he up to speed with the offense? And where's he at? Because keep in mind, 3 preseason games. I don't think Kirk should play or will play in any of them, which makes these practices and practices in general extremely important. Yes, we can all say, well, Kirk knows his offense. He played for O'Connell in Washington. He knows his offense, but it's changed, right? And Kirk has talked about that, and I don't doubt that. Like, I don't have any, like, oh, Kirk's lying. Kirk's not lying. September 11th against Green Bay, I'm not saying the offense is going to be perfect. I don't believe that. But I do think it's going to have to be set to go. And I think that going against another team in practices in a controlled environment, coming off COVID, and I think our friend Kevin Seifert, ESPN, did report that on Tuesday Kirk was back in the building, so he should be fine. Mm-hmm. I think it's going to be a pretty important step to say, where is Kirk Cousins at? The most important chip as far as processing the offense, Dex. Where is he at as far as the progress goes here? Because it's going to be a trickle down, but it starts with Kirk. September 11th, there's going to be a new offense in town, and he's going to run it.
Look, so let's look at the time he has missed here. So he stepped away from practice, I believe, on Wednesday, right? He was positive by Thursday. So he's basically missed about a week, or maybe, like, I believe he actually stepped out on Thursday. Regardless, he's missed about 5 days.
Yep.
He wasn't going to play in the first preseason game. Mandatory or off day, at least of some sort, on Monday.
Yep.
So I don't think it's against him, and nor do I think people are going to hold it against him that he missed the 5 days because of COVID. Now, if he's not able to practice in these joint practices because of the lingering effects of COVID, that's a different story, and we can have that as the week progresses if that becomes a storyline.
Yes.
But I don't look at his at him missing time now as something that'll hold him back or be a setback to him. And in fact, if anyone wants to use that against him, I think that's pretty cheap and lazy. And man, this is a show that has criticized Kirk Cousins for some things that some people might say are cheap and lazy. I don't think him being out these last 5 days are going to affect that in terms of his speed, to your main point of getting familiar with the offense. But I do believe that he does have to get up to speed a little bit here. It's a brand new offense still. And as much as Kirk loves to talk about those code words and we work together, but now things are so different. It's not the same as it was in Washington, blah, blah, blah. Still a very important week in Kirk Cousins picking up this offense.
Right. And Kirk, I think, did say at some point in training camp that these practices are extremely important. And he's not wrong about that. Like, there are enough things where I will side with what Kirk has said is there are enough things that change, because he's right. You know, this league evolves constantly. So what Kirk did in 2017 with O'Connell in Washington, yeah, there's elements of that still around, but it does change and it evolves and it becomes more complicated. And so I guess the question is this. We get a chance to see where Kirk is at as far as processing this. Because I think it's like a test. And, you know, if you have part of the test down, that's fantastic. But the more of the test that you can pass, the more possibilities. And I think there are ultimately, at least if I'm right about this, a hell of a lot of possibilities here. Like if you consider but I mean, we talk about this, right? We talk about Wongwu and the potential plays with him. We talk about Cook being in the passing game. And some of that's fundamental playbook stuff. I get that. But some of it's probably pretty complicated. And some of it's probably stuff that we have not seen in practices because they're not going to show it because they don't want, you know, they don't want Judd Zolgad being like, yeah, I saw this trick play where Jefferson gets the ball. So I'm not saying that we haven't seen anything, but I do think that there is a fundamental step here in an evolution, that's probably the fair word, that Kirk is going to have to take. So that's one. Number two is this, and this is as simple as it gets.
Okay.
But I think it's extremely important. I think this week, and I think it's this week, so this is not one where I'm like, I don't know for sure. This week is you need to make a decision on QB2. And the joint practices to me for Mond are huge. Number one, I'm checked out. I'm not sure about you. I'm checked out on Sean Mannion.
Oh yeah.
Like I'm done there.
Yeah.
So I'm through with that one. Mond, there's a lot of things I'm concerned about, but there are some things.
There's upside.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But I think this is the week. And I think this is the week that you say, okay, we're going to proceed, or, okay, Mond's going to make the team, but we're not going to proceed with him as QB2. I think this week is instrumental. Like, I don't think preseason game 3 is it. I'm not sure about you. I think that these two joint practices and preseason game 2 will decide if, oh my God, we got to go get QB2 and we'll keep Mond, or, you know what, Kellen might have a shot.
It's actually pretty crazy when you break it down from the standpoint of 1 week in training camp is so integral to figuring out a quarterback's future with this team. I mean, if you really actually boil this down, and I don't think this is overreactionary at all. This week in Kellen Mond's career, and this isn't me just trying to guzzle down what you're saying, is so important to Kellen Mond's career. He took, I think, a really solid step forward in that preseason game. And he might say, hey, that's just me going out there and playing football and learning the system and blah, blah, blah. But he had such a witness protection-esque season last year and didn't have encouragement and didn't have optimism and basically was thrown to the wolves and didn't, basically sunk the whole time. This week for him is big. And if they don't see something in practice that says that they want to keep him around, because I think what is shown in practice here in this, if I can do a pseudo pie chart versus what's going to happen in the game, it's probably going to be like 90% what is happening in this practice. Then, all right, how does that translate to a preseason games running against the 2s and 3s of San Francisco? I think this week, to your point, is integral for Kellen Mond. And if he goes out there and just shows in practice and in the game that he can't handle this, then there is probably going to be some type of not panic move, but a sense of urgency from the staff from Kwesi to KOC down that says, we got to fix this and we got to fix it fast because we don't really have the luxury of time anymore of waiting. And also it's not fair to this team to not go out and try to address someone. Doogie on our scoop session throughout, was it Nick Mullins, who was the 3rd string quarterback for the Raiders? Yeah, I wouldn't mind a Nick Mullins. Hell, I wouldn't mind a Jarrett Stidham. I really wouldn't. at this point.
Yep.
So this week, I don't think it's you being overreactionary at all to a degree. I think this is the most important week of Kellen Mond's career as a Minnesota Viking.
I think it's also pretty important, too, that they move on from Mannion, period. Like, if you're going to sit there and say, well, he holds Kirk's hand, I'm just not down with that. The Mond thing, and look, I mean, Mond made some good plays on Sunday against the Raiders. It's my personal opinion that he's probably not going to get to a point where I consider him to be QB2. But the other thing that's, I guess, more important to me is this. You have to move on from Sean Mannion. Like what we saw on Sunday and what we saw, what was that last December 30th or in Green Bay?
Yeah.
Like it's not doable. Like I can't do that. I can't go, like if you're willing to go back there, you're willing to go to a place that I would not go. All right, talking point number 3 of the to-do list. Again, these things aren't like brain surgery. Like, I can't believe you're talking about this. These things are all pretty simple, but I think the joint practice aspect makes them important. And I think this third thing is very simple. And I think it comes off the joint practices far more than Saturday's game. Are you going to proceed with Garrett Bradbury? Are you going to proceed there? Because, again, you know what? Dex, much like Mond, I think this week becomes incredibly important. Because here's what I don't get. I feel like you're tracking right for the first time in a long time. And we've talked about this extensively on our shows, and I think it's accurate. For the first time in a long time, I feel like you're tracking correctly on the line. Right? Like Ingram might start. Okay, I'm down with that. Your tackles, I think they're good. Your left guard, okay, I'm fine there. Ezra Cleveland. Garrett Bradbury, though. If Garrett Bradbury in the joint practices gets tossed aside, and he's, and I'd like to demonstrate for you, okay?
God.
So, if I'm back on my heel, like here's Bradbury. Here's Brad. You know what I liked about Schlottmann? He's not that great, but you know what I like? He was like this. He's coming forward. 3D. He's coming at you. Bradbury, look at him. It's this. If that's Garrett Bradbury, I don't think I can do that anymore. I don't think it's smart. And I don't think that it's smart I don't think you can have everything around Kirk be pretty damn good and then be like, yeah, your center's still going to be suspect.
Right.
Kenny Clark week 1, Philadelphia week 2. So my third thing, and I think it's extremely important, it's time to make a decision. Garrett Bradbury. And if he gets tossed around like a rag doll, my decision, he might not be cut, but my decision is pretty simple. If nothing else, I give Schlottmann a chance. First team center.
You know, we as much as we want to pine for the backup quarterback position and who could be QB2, is it on the roster in Kellen Mond or is it someone else that they could trade for? That's a different conversation. But in reality, the more impactful position that the Vikings really need to figure out is their starting center. And, you know, for the fact Kevin O'Connell said now almost 2 weeks ago that it's basically an open competition at the starting center spot for a guy who has been your starter for the last 3 seasons, and you didn't even go out and address that position in free agency or the draft to a degree. I think that was a big red flag, and I think that I don't know if there's buyer's remorse there necessarily with Kevin O'Connell and Kwesi, but I bet if they could redo, their first off season or their first to-do list, we're just doing a to-do list for in the joint practices, but their first to-do list in free agency and the draft, probably would have been, let's go find a legitimate center, dude, or let's draft someone. And look, they find Austin Schlottmann on the street.
Right.
That might end up being a guy for you, but I would have felt a hell of a lot better with them taking you can find centers in day 3. You can find a center in day 2. It's not like we were asking them to draft Tyler Lindenbaum. And by the way, if it was Tyler Lindenbaum over Lewis Cine, and you can expose me if this ends up turning wrong, I would have been red in the face that they took a chance on a center with your first round pick, but they didn't do that. And now I think after mini camps, the first week of training camp, I think this staff from general manager down is like, oh God, this Garrett Bradbury thing, as much as we've watched things on film and we can scheme appropriately as much as we can, this could be an issue here. This is the one linchpin here that is preventing you from being a top 5 offense. That might sound crazy of like, really, Declan, the center, but you've been 11th and 14th in points with this personnel. Having a competent or an above average center, those little type of tweaks, plug in a nice right guard, plug in a nice center on your interior offensive line. Yes, that takes you from 11th to 8th to 7th, whatever it is, and as being a top 10 offense. So I actually think that's the bigger thing to watch here in training camp. I personally would have it on my number one to-do list here because I do think they kind of dropped the ball on not addressing the center position in the offseason.
And if I'm not mistaken, in week 2, they're going to face the Eagles, who drafted Nebraska center in the second round, Cam Jurgens, who we talked about extensively on this show, who so far has been a stud. So he's been Ingram-like, but he's been that guy at the center position. And so, yeah, they're going to have to make a decision. I don't think your decision can be, well, he was a first-round pick. We didn't pick up his fifth-year option, but we're going to play him. I think this week, if he gets pushed around, I think you seriously have to say, you know what, we can't do this. Mm-hmm. It's far from ideal. I don't like it, but yeah, you're sort of right. And as far as the to-do list goes, so like the Mon thing is a backup, and he might make the roster. He might be the third guy. That's an important long-term potential decision. It might not be too. But to what we're talking about, and you're right, this could be atop their list, is you're talking about a team that's expected to win in 2022, a starter, a first-round pick, and this just might be it. And you know what? If this is it, make the decision. That's the other thing. Make the decision. Pull the plug. I mean, just say, you know what? It's not going to work. You're not going to start. And Schlottmann is far from ideal, but this sounds so stupid, but it's true. I'd rather have a guy who's moving forward at the snap, not backwards. And that's where Bradbury always seems to be, backwards. And right now you face 3 techs and nose tackles that are damn good. So that's my third thing.
Okay. Number 4?
Number 4, number 4 is sponsored though.
Is it?
Number 4, Declan Goff is sponsored. Because you know what? There was a point in time, offensive linemen had a problem with weight. They needed to lose weight. They get done with their careers and they'd be like, I am heavy. What am I going to do? And you know what? To every one of them, Coach Zolgad has a suggestion. Livia Weight Control Centers. Because I've dropped 40 pounds, and most importantly, I'm keeping that weight off. And here's the other thing, too. This is all about teamwork. I have an update on the lovely Dawn Zolgad, who went to Livia today and is now down 16 pounds. So wow. She's down 16. I'm down 40. In fairness, she started long after I did because she said, you've lost all this weight. I want to lose weight too. And I said, of course. You know what? Teamwork. Join me. We will go at this together. And right now, I want to ask you to tell you that you can get aboard the Livia Weight Loss bandwagon. It's this easy. Their anniversary sale. Right now, you can join the program for 50% off. 50% off, Declan Goff. 855-GO-LIVIA, livia.com. And now you're saying, well, Judd, okay, that's great, but how do I spell it? And I'm going to tell you, livea.com. Livia, livea.com. It is your first step towards weight loss and all of those clothes fitting again. And best of all, keeping that weight off for good.
By the way, you can savor the rest of summer at the Meadows at Mystic Lake. We might in deep August here. It might be State Fair time. It might be Vikings football time. You can still get in some summer golf in here. And fall golf, in my opinion, is still the elite time to get out there and golf. And there's no better place to enjoy that than at the Meadows at Mystic Lake. A nice, easy drive down 169 from the Twin Cities. They have GPS tracking carts there, so you know exactly what your yardage is hitting. I can't tell you how many times Old Dex Tweets has to guesstimate on how far he is from the pin, because usually he's pretty far away from that. Thankfully, the carts there at the Meadows at Mystic Lake provide me that information. And then when you're done with your round, you can go and enjoy a cold one on the Meadows Bar and Grill. Nice little patio session there. Stock up on some balls and apparel at their full-service golf shop as well. Book your tee time now at golfthemeadows.com to learn more. Golfthemeadows.com. The Meadows at Mystic Lake.
I love fall. I absolutely love.
I think
fall.
It's a little overrated of a season. I think hot take.
No,
I think it's an overrated season, but there's things about fall that are second to none.
Fall. Spring used to be the young Judd likes spring the most.
Another hot take is we don't have spring in Minnesota like it does.
The old Judd, but when we do have spring, we have had spring. It just depends on if you see it or not. All right. On my Vikings to-do list for their joint practices against San Francisco. Number 4. I don't think these guys are going to play preseason games. And by the way, I have no problem with that. But in the joint practices, they definitely will get plenty of action. how well do Danielle Hunter and Za'Darius Smith click? And this isn't a fear if they're healthy that they're not going to be good. I just want to see it. I just want to see it because I think it's going to be if and keep in mind this is a big if, because Hunter's had back-to-back years of injuries that I think have in 2 years limited him to 6+ games in full, and Za'Darius Smith missed almost all of last season with Packers with a back injury. He came back in the playoffs, but I just want to see how these two look together because I think, knock on wood, they're healthy. September 11th against the Packers. It's going to be great fun. But, like, I just want a little bit of a taste. I just want to, oh, my goodness gracious, that's a great move. And, again, I am not faulting O'Connell if he does not play him in the preseason. In fact, I almost applaud that. But the joint practices, they definitely will be out there, more of a controlled environment, and I'm sure that they're going to try some things. So, Dex, I guess this comes from more of a curiosity standpoint. But those two in the 3-4 outside linebacker pass rushers, I think that's something I am really looking forward to seeing as much as we possibly can, because together they could be nightmares.
Yeah, I mean, I think they're the most important pieces on that defense, and if they aren't getting after the quarterback, even at an average rate, this has kind of been a tune I've been singing the last few months now on Ventline episodes, on Purple Daily and other things, and if those two aren't elite, top 5, top 10 at getting after the pass rusher, getting after the quarterback, I should say, as pass rushers, the Vikings defense is going to be bad. It's going to be horrendous again. They don't have the personnel on their defensive backs and safeties yet to be good again. So if Danielle Hunter and Za'Darius Smith aren't just wreaking havoc on opposing quarterbacks, that defense is going to be bad. And it's a gamble. Like, I mean, 3 years ago, Phil pointed out the fact that in 2019, again, 3 years ago, and that's a long time in NFL days, that those two were the number 1 and 2 guys at getting pressure, even if they're, let's call it, 6th and 10th at getting after pressure, respectively. Right. That's going to be huge for that Vikings defense. Like, obviously, staying healthy is number 1, and then number 2 is, can they still remain elite pass rushers? I'm confident Hunter is. Za'Darius is probably the more bigger question mark, just because he's a little older and he's only played in 1 game, basically dating back to 2020. So they have to. Like, they have to stay on the field, and the pressure on them. You kind of used last year of the Vikings are expected to be better on the rush defense. Like, they have to be better at it, and they stunk. They were still horrible at it with Dalvin Tomlinson and Michael Pierce missing time as well. The Vikings cannot afford to have those 2 players be mediocre or worse next season.
Yeah, and the only guy, and the potential replacement that intrigues me, and he played well for the most part against the Raiders on Sunday, Patrick Jones II. Mm-hmm. Like, I think DJ Wanham, who is also a backup there, I think he's a backup. I think. Patrick Jones II does intrigue me. But yes, if Za'Darius Smith and Danielle Hunter are healthy and firing on all cylinders, it could be a lot of fun. And I'm just curious to get a little bit of a preview of what they could potentially bring.
Absolutely.
All right, number 5 on my list, Vikings to-do list for the 49ers joint practices. I think this is pretty important, too, because, again, this is a team that has aspirations. There's no question about it. This is not a team that is like a competitive rebuild. Does not mean rebuild. And I'm willing to go down this path with them. Like, I argued against it. It's too late. It's over. I'm willing to go down this path, but it changes my thought process a bit. And my 5th thing is this. You are now going to have to give a serious judgment to your backup corners. Starting with a guy who's learning clearly, and I like him, but he's learning, Andrew Booth Jr. Caleb Evans also factors in, but Patrick Peterson, I think, is going to be fine. He's aging, but I think he's going to be fine. Cam Dantzler, I hope is going to be improved and fine. But someone's going to get hurt because you're basically going to play Peterson, Dantzler, and then Shandon Sullivan at nickel, who they acquired as a free agent from the Packers. So you got to have a pretty good read here. Because if you're going to go with Booth Jr. and Evans, and like I suggested today on Mackey and Judd, or I should say on Tuesday, and you're going to cut Boyd, you're leaving yourself pretty thin there. Now, if you're confident in your backups, that's fine. If you're not, I think you might have to go out and get a veteran to at least be a backup. Because, I mean, Peterson, Sullivan, and Dantzler are going to start. I don't think there's a debate about that. But that's the other thing. In these joint practices where you're going against a team that you don't know that's going to probably do a few things with Trey Lance differently, I think the backup cornerback spot, given what you're trying to do, which is win now, becomes pretty important to make sure that you have some certainty about it.
Yeah, it's a weak position, I would say, of the things that they have to address if they were to address anything between their backup quarterback, their starting center, and their cornerback. I still put cornerback third at this rate. Like it's a developmental position for them right now. They're hoping Cam Dantzler takes a step forward. They're hoping a Caleb Evans fills some needs. They're obviously hoping Andrew Booth Jr. takes a big step forward in his rookie year, but it's a rookie cornerback, and it's probably the toughest position, you've pointed this out, to adjust from college and the NFL. So I don't think they'll panic and make a panic move to address that cornerback room right away, pending an injury. You know, like if they lost Pat P or
Right.
Shannon Sullivan, then they'd have to force their hand a little bit.
Yes.
But I don't foresee them making a big change and adding someone unless just something kind of falls in their lap a little bit. But it is their weakest position. Like if the pass rush and Za'Darius and Danielle don't get after, like guys like Aaron Rodgers are going to throw all over them. When they play Josh Allen, they're going to throw all over them. You know, Jalen Hurts is as much as people have some questions about him, he can scramble with the best of them and he can avoid pressure. And if the cornerbacks aren't doing their job, he can burn you. So it's their weakest position. I really think and that's not a hot take. It's their weakest position. But I am curious kind of how those guys develop. You know, how quickly can a Caleb Evans and Andrew Booth basically step in and
Right.
be almost immediate contributors on that defense by the time the regular season starts.
And that's difficult. That's difficult, but you have to know, are they going to be abject failures if they have to play, or are you going to be able to, in at least some way, shape, or form, muddle on through? Anyway, five things on a to-do list for the next 2 days. Vikings, 49ers joint practices. Declan Goff.
Wow. You're going to be out there. You're going to be watching watching Kyle Shanahan.
I'm going to be out
Kirk.
there. We're going to be doing PD, talking about this.
Mm-hmm.
I'm hoping I can learn some things. I'm
too.
hoping I can glean. Glean is the right word.
You got the binoculars. You'll have the binoculars out, ready to rock. You'll be looking at beautiful grizzled Kyle Shanahan. Will he have a 5 o'clock shadow?
There we go.
Will he be more bearded? Will he have?
We won't know.
Shaven?
We won't know
Well,
until I'm out there.
I don't know. I'm curious.
We won't know. Take us home.
All
I'm
right.
just looking through my binoculars.
Hit the subscribe button for daily Minnesota sports entertainment on this YouTube channel. Write that down, predictions on the back end of the podcast and later on this YouTube channel as well. You can hit the subscribe button for daily Minnesota sports entertainment. Go check out Purple Daily for more bonus. Write that down, predictions, and also some Judd Camp notes, some latest news on Mike Zimmer, who's back as an analyst with Deion Primetime Sanders at Jackson State. So plenty of stuff to get into. Hit the subscribe button. Daily Minnesota Vikings entertainment. Mackey and Judd.